I used to think danger wore a mask of violence, that it came crashing into your life like a storm. I never imagined it could wear a smile, a pressed gray suit, and carry a leather briefcase every morning. I never imagined danger could kiss our son on the head and wave goodbye from a train platform, pretending to be the model husband everyone envied. For years, I lived beside Marcus, believing stability meant safety. But the day my 5-year-old son whispered, "Mom, I don't want to go home," everything I thought I knew shattered. Our routine was always the same. Caleb and I walked hand in hand with Marcus to the Metro North Station in White Plains. He looked impeccable, nodding at neighbors, checking his watch, radiating responsibility. People admired him, saying I was lucky to have a man who kept the fridge full and bills paid. On the outside, we looked like an enviable family. But behind closed doors, there was a silence that grew heavier every night. A coldness that made me question if this was truly what marriage meant. That morning, as Marcus walked ahead, Caleb tugged on my hand. His lips trembled, and he said words that sent a chill through me. "Last night, I heard Dad talking about us. He said he doesn't want us at home anymore, and he has a plan with you." I froze in the middle of the bustling station. At first, I wanted to believe it was childish imagination, but the seriousness in his eyes was too real. I hugged him tightly, heart pounding, forcing myself to smile when Marcus turned to wave goodbye. From that moment, my husband's silhouette no longer looked like a provider. It looked like a stranger, concealing something dangerous. I pretended everything was normal. But as soon as we returned home, I noticed the first crack in the facade, a new deadbolt on the apartment door. Marcus had never mentioned it, and the sight of it sent a shiver down my spine. That evening, while he showered, I noticed a drawer slightly ajar. Inside, hidden beneath old tablecloths, was a folder stuffed with documents. My hands shook as I flipped through them. Insurance policies, dozens, all taken out in recent months. Every one of them had me listed as the insured, and Marcus as the sole beneficiary. My breath caught. It could have been precaution. Yes, but why had he never told me? Why so many? So close together? I shoved the folder back exactly as I found it, terrified he would notice my intrusion. That night, when he smiled across the dinner table, I could hardly swallow my food. I told myself to stay calm, but the knot in my stomach only tightened. Later, when I tucked Caleb into bed, I kissed his forehead and silently promised him I would protect him, no matter what it took. The next day, while slicing fruit in the kitchen, I overheard Marcus on the phone. His voice was low but sharp, every syllable deliberate. "This week, it has to be closed. No one can find out." My blood ran cold. I forced my hands to keep moving, slicing apples as if I hadn't heard. When he walked in, he smiled naturally, asking about Caleb's snack. I handed him a plate, pretending my heart wasn't hammering. He acted like a husband, but I no longer saw the man I once loved. I saw an actor rehearsing lines, every gesture calculated. That night, I pretended to sleep. At midnight, the glow of his laptop illuminated the bedroom. Through half-closed eyes, I watched him type furiously, delete search histories, and slide files into hidden folders. His face was cold, focused, as if planning something he couldn't share. My breathing stayed slow and steady, but inside, terror screamed. When he finally shut the laptop and slid into bed, wrapping an arm around me, I felt none of the warmth that once comforted me. Only a chill that confirmed my trust in him was gone. Days later, as I dropped Caleb at school, another mother pulled me aside. Her voice was urgent, trembling. "Be careful with your husband. He's involved in strange things." She refused to say more, disappearing into the crowd. I stood frozen, her warning echoing in my ears. By then, I didn't need more proof. I had already seen too much: the policies, the phone calls, the secretive nights. But hearing it confirmed by a stranger felt like the ground giving way beneath me. That evening, when Marcus kissed me casually on the cheek, I forced myself to smile. But inside, I knew. My son was right. Our home was no longer safe. The man I lived with wasn't my protector. He was my threat. And if I wanted to save Caleb and myself, I had to play my part in this twisted theater, pretending to be blind while quietly preparing to fight back. From that night on, I became an actress in my own home. Every smile, every word, every dinner plate I set on the table was part of a performance meant to convince Marcus I suspected nothing. But inside, I lived in a constant state of dread, my nerves taut as wires ready to snap. I began to study him carefully: how he lingered on his phone, how he tucked his briefcase under his arm as if it contained secrets too valuable to leave unguarded. I memorized every detail, desperate to understand the plan Caleb had overheard. The fear grew unbearable when I discovered more proof. One evening, while Marcus showered, I quietly searched through his desk. In his computer, I found transfers money regularly wired to a woman I didn't know. They weren't massive amounts, but steady and deliberate. My stomach twisted as I saved screenshots onto a flash drive, hiding it in my makeup bag. Who was she? Why was he paying her? My hands trembled as I shut the computer down just before I heard the water stop running. When he emerged, towel around his waist. He smiled casually, unaware I had just uncovered one of his darkest secrets. Not long after, I caught sight of an email on his phone when he carelessly left it unlocked. It was from her, the same woman receiving his money. Her words dripped with intimacy, plans made, gratitude for funds sent, promises of a shared future. My heart shattered. It wasn't just betrayal, it was conspiracy. He wasn't merely unfaithful. He was building a life without me, one that required me gone. I folded laundry, pretending not to have seen, while tears stung my eyes. Caleb's words echoed louder than ever. "Dad doesn't want us at home anymore." That night, Caleb clung to me in the dark, whispering, "Don't tell Dad. I'm scared." His small voice pierced through me like a knife. A 5-year-old should not carry such fear. But he already sensed the danger in ways I wished he hadn't. I hugged him tightly and silently vowed I would not let Marcus harm us. From that moment on, I stopped doubting. My husband wasn't just planning a betrayal. He was planning something darker, something final. I crafted an excuse to put distance between us. I told Marcus that Caleb wasn't feeling well, that we would spend a few days at my sister's house so he could rest. To my surprise, Marcus didn't object. He even seemed relieved, which only deepened my conviction. He wanted us gone, but only on his terms. Packing a small bag, I walked out of our apartment with Caleb's hand in mine, my heart racing as though I were escaping a prison. At my sister's house, I pretended everything was fine. I told her only that I needed company and rest, but the truth weighed heavily on me. Nights were easier there. I slept without fearing what Marcus might do while I lay beside him. But the reprieve was temporary. His shadow still hung over me. One afternoon, a neighbor approached me on the balcony and said she had seen Marcus entering our apartment with another woman. The description matched the woman from the emails and bank transfers. My home, the place I had built, the space where Caleb's toys once cluttered the floor, was now being shared with his mistress. The betrayal ignited something inside me. I couldn't keep pretending forever. I needed undeniable proof, something no one could dismiss as paranoia. One evening, I crept back to the apartment while Marcus was out. From the courtyard, I saw him and the woman sitting in the living room, glasses of wine in hand, laughing as if my life had already been erased. Rage and despair nearly overwhelmed me, but I stayed hidden, silently watching. That was when I overheard her voice through the open window. She said confidently, "Once she signs the papers, everything will be ours." The words hit me like a physical blow. The insurance policies, the secret transfers, the emails, it all snapped into focus. This wasn't just infidelity. It was conspiracy. They wanted me gone. They were waiting for me to sign something that would seal my fate. I ran from the courtyard, barely able to breathe, knowing that what Caleb had heard wasn't imagination. It was real, and it was deadly. The next day, I gathered the insurance papers and screenshots and went to the police. My hands shook as I handed them over, recounting everything I had seen and heard. The officer listened politely but shook his head. "This could be financial fraud, maybe insurance manipulation," he said. "But without proof, he intends to harm you. It's hard to act." His words felt like betrayal on top of betrayal. I begged him to at least file a report, to have a record of my fear. But I left the precinct feeling more alone than ever. Back at my sister's, Caleb reminded me of something I had overlooked. One night, while playing with his tablet, he had accidentally recorded part of a conversation between Marcus and the woman. With trembling fingers, he found the file and played it. Marcus's voice was unmistakable. "Once she signs the will, everything will be ready." My body went cold as the words confirmed everything I feared. This was no longer suspicion, it was evidence. I hugged Caleb tightly, whispering gratitude even as fear consumed me. His innocent accident had given me the weapon I needed to fight back. Clutching the tablet, I knew I finally had what the police couldn't ignore. The proof that my husband was plotting against me, and that I had to act fast before his plan came to fruition. The following morning, I walked back into the police precinct holding Caleb's tablet like a lifeline. This time, when the detective played the recording, his skeptical expression melted into grim seriousness. Marcus's voice was clear, calculated, unmistakable. "Once she signs the will, everything will be ready." The detective typed rapidly on his computer, the sound of the keys like a drumbeat in my chest. "This changes things," he said finally. "We'll open a formal investigation. But you must keep acting as though you know nothing. If he suspects, he might accelerate his plan." Relief and dread collided inside me. At last, someone believed me. Yet the price of protection was to continue living my lie. I left the station gripping Caleb's hand, telling myself we were one step closer to safety. At my sister's, I packed our essentials into 2 separate bags and hid them in her closet, ready to leave at a moment's notice. My sister asked questions I couldn't answer. All I could say was, "It's not safe yet. The officers installed discreet surveillance near our apartment. They didn't wear uniforms or announce themselves, but I sensed them in unmarked cars on the corner, silent sentinels watching for proof. It was surreal to walk through my own life like a performer on a stage. Every time Marcus called me, I forced my voice steady, pretending normality while inside I trembled. Every text from him made my palms sweat. I had to become a mask to survive. Days dragged by. At night, lying awake at my sister's, I thought of all the times I had dismissed my intuition, all the nights I had rolled toward Marcus seeking warmth, unaware of the cold plans forming behind his calm eyes. My guilt was heavy, but so was my resolve. I was no longer a passive witness. I was a mother gathering evidence, preparing for a fight to save her child. One afternoon, the detective called. His voice was clipped but urgent. "We've been tailing Marcus. He's meeting someone regularly at a bar in downtown Newark. They're discussing how to stage a home accident. We're close to having everything we need." I gripped the phone until my knuckles whitened. The words "home accident" rattled through me like a death knell. It was one thing to suspect, another to hear it confirmed. I asked what I should do. "Stay put. Don't change your routine. We're preparing to act," he replied. I hung up and sat very still, trying to slow my breathing. I pictured Marcus at that bar, speaking in low tones about my death as though it were an item on his to-do list. I felt nausea rise, but swallowed it back. His arrogance was his weakness. That public meeting had given the police exactly what they needed. Still, every day felt like walking on a cliff's edge. When Marcus called to check on Caleb, his voice soft and affectionate, I wanted to scream into the phone that I knew everything, but I didn't. I kept my tone light, told him Caleb was getting better, even asked about his workday. Pretending normality was the hardest performance of my life. Caleb watched me with wide, worried eyes. Even at 5 years old, he sensed the strain. At night, I held him until he fell asleep, whispering that we were safe, even though I wasn't sure. The fear was exhausting, but I also felt a current of strength. We were not victims waiting to be harmed. We were witnesses, building a case, fighting back, finally, on a gray morning heavy with drizzle. The phone rang again. This time, the detective's voice was firm. "Ma'am, you can rest easy. Marcus has been arrested." For a moment, I couldn't speak. My knees gave out and I sank onto the floor. Caleb clinging to my arm. Tears poured from me. Not out of love lost, but out of rage, relief, and the crushing weight of survival. The nightmare had not ended, but the threat had been removed. They had arrested him at the bar as he finalized details with his accomplice. The police now had enough to charge him with conspiracy to commit murder and insurance fraud. I hung up the phone and pressed my forehead to the cool tile of my sister's kitchen floor. Caleb kneeling beside me. "It's over," I whispered. "You're safe now." But even as I said it, I knew our journey was far from over. There would be hearings, court dates, and questions. People would doubt me, ask why I hadn't left sooner, why I hadn't seen the signs. Yet in that moment, none of it mattered. What mattered was that my son and I were alive. We had escaped the web Marcus had spun for us. That night, for the first time in weeks, I slept without fear. Caleb curled beside me, his breathing slow and steady, his small hand gripping mine. In the darkness, I thought of the path ahead, of rebuilding our lives from the ruins Marcus had left. I thought of how close I had come to losing everything, and I promised myself that from now on, I would never ignore my instincts again. When the news of Marcus's arrest became public, I felt stripped bare. People I once considered friends whispered behind my back. Some pitied me, others judged me, as if I had chosen to share my life with a monster. At the hearings, I sat rigid, holding back tears as prosecutors laid out the charges: insurance fraud, conspiracy to commit murder, betrayal dressed in the clothes of routine. I never once looked directly at Marcus. He tried to meet my eyes, but the man I had married no longer existed. In his place sat a stranger, his face cold, his smile absent, his mask finally shattered. The legal process was long and draining. Every appearance in court reopened wounds I was still trying to close. I had to listen to recordings of his voice, to see photographs of documents I had once hidden under my blouse, to revisit every moment of fear. But through it all, I held my head high, not just for myself, but for Caleb. I wanted him to see that truth and courage could stand firm even in the face of humiliation. Each day, I told myself I survived. My son survived. That was what mattered most. Outside the courtroom, I began quietly rebuilding our lives. I moved into a new apartment under a different lease, opened a fresh bank account, and transferred Caleb to another school where no one knew our story. Every decision felt like a stitch in the fabric of freedom. At night, when the silence pressed in, I whispered affirmations to myself. We are safe. We are starting over. We are stronger now. Still, the scars remained. There were nights when I woke up drenched in sweat, convinced I heard Marcus unlocking the door. There were moments when Caleb clung to me suddenly, his eyes wide, his young body trembling with unspoken fears. But slowly, little by little, the shadows loosened their grip. We began to laugh again. I discovered pieces of joy in simple routines, making pancakes on Saturday mornings, walking hand in hand through Central Park, hearing Caleb's giggles echo through the trees. One afternoon, as I watched him run across the grass chasing pigeons, it hit me we were laughing without fear. For months, laughter had felt like betrayal, like a luxury I couldn't afford while danger hovered over us. But now, it was proof of survival. In his joy, I saw the life I had fought to protect. I also faced the harder work of forgiving myself. For years, I had believed Marcus's mask, ignoring the unease in my chest, brushing away my instincts as paranoia. That guilt lingered, heavy as a stone. But I began to realize that strength wasn't in never being deceived. It was in finding the courage to rise after deception. I was not a broken woman. I was a rebuilt woman, scarred but standing. When the trial concluded, Marcus was sentenced. I sat in the back of the courtroom, Caleb at my side, and listened as the judge declared his fate. I felt no triumph, no gloating, only a weary finality, like closing the cover on a book I never wanted to read again. As we left, Caleb slipped his small hand into mine and whispered, "We're free now, Mama." His words were the truest verdict of all. Life after Marcus was not easy, but it was ours. I began to plan for the future again, thinking of moving to a different city, of finding work that fulfilled me, of giving Caleb the kind of life where trust and love weren't poisoned by deceit. Every step forward was a defiance against the darkness that had tried to destroy us. Today, when I look in the mirror, I no longer see the frightened woman who pretended to sleep while her husband plotted beside her. I see someone stronger, someone who walked through betrayal and survived. And when I walk Caleb to school, I no longer carry fear. I carry pride. We are still here. We are still together. We won. If there is one lesson my story holds, it is this: never ignore the quiet voice inside you. Instincts are often the first alarm when danger hides behind a smile. Trust them, even when others dismiss your fear. And know that even in the deepest betrayal, there is a way forward. Survival is not just breathing. It is reclaiming your life, your dignity, your future. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If it touched your heart, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe so I can keep bringing you more powerful life stories. And don't forget to check out the next videos waiting for you on the screen. They hold lessons just as moving as this one. With love and respect, see you in the next story.